But why? Why did Pope Benedict allow for this wider use of this liturgy that you are experiencing here tonight? And what you're experiencing here tonight, let me make it very clear, is the most solemn form of this liturgy. The pontifical liturgy celebrated by the bishop, especially by the bishop in his own diocese, is the highest form of the liturgy. And every other celebration of the Holy Mass derives from this liturgy. And in the usus antiquor, in the former rite, the Mass could be celebrated in the most simple way, what we call the low Mass, even a private low Mass. But the private low Mass, sort of the lowest way of celebrating this Mass, still is a participation and takes its lead, its example from this liturgy, the solemn pontifical liturgy, the liturgy celebrated by the high priest. But why is this so important? Why did Pope Benedict see that this was necessary to keep alive in the Church? Well, in his letter, and in the explanatory note and letter that went with Summorum Pontificum, he made it very clear. His first reason for allowing a greater and freer use of this solemn liturgy is as a way of extending his pastoral care and concern for those Catholics who remain very much attached to the former rites. It was a great pastoral, loving extension of a hand of mercy toward them, to allow those who appreciate and who are deeply attached to this form to be able to experience and celebrate it freely, without barriers. And so a great, great outreach. And even, quite honestly, I think to those who are no longer part of the full communion of the Catholic Church, but who have separated themselves in some way and find themselves in a very unique canonical situation, but who no longer have that full communion with the Church, to extend a hand of friendship to them as well. So certainly that's true, although what's always amazing to me is when I see congregations gather to celebrate this sacred liturgy, I'm always amazed at how many young people are present. Maybe not so many here tonight, but we have a lot of young people here tonight. And young people who experience this liturgy are amazed. And that's the second reason why Pope Benedict allowed for this greater use of this Mass. He says that we must remain in very close communion with our past. Pope Benedict was one who spoke very stridently about the need for a hermeneutic, he calls it, of continuity, a way of interpreting the reforms called for by the Second Vatican Council in continuity with the Church's past. He says there can be no rupture. There can be no rupture. We cannot go from something that was to something that is completely new and different. He said that would be a hermeneutic, a way of interpreting the council and the called for reforms in a way of rupture with the past, as if somehow everything sort of was reset at the Second Vatican Council and everything began anew at the Second Vatican Council. He says, no, this is the wrong way to interpret the council, the wrong way to interpret all of the teaching of the Second Vatican Council, including her teaching on the reform of the sacred liturgy. No, he says, we must have a hermeneutic, a way of interpreting that is in complete and utter continuity with the past. And so as we look at liturgical reform, it must be seen as an organic development from that which has gone before. It has to be clearly is seen and experienced as not a rupture, as not something new, but as a very readable, a very understandable, a very obvious even, organic outgrowth of what has gone before. That's continuity. And that's why I think Pope Benedict wanted this liturgy to still exist and be present in the church. Because this liturgy then becomes, if you will, the model against which we measure all liturgical reform. It becomes the exemplar for the reform. When we look at what needs to be reformed in the sacred liturgy, this is the liturgy we start with. And then we reform from this liturgy as the exemplar. I want to leave you with one final thought. I should say something about the scriptures we just heard. St. Paul, in his letter, he talks about love. He talks about the importance and the centrality of love. It is the greatest of all the virtues. And he says it doesn't matter. If I have faith enough to move mountains, but I don't have love, it's useless. If I have the gift of prophecy and have not love, it's useless. If I even give everything I have and tend to the needs of the poor, but don't have love, it's for naught. I would add something, if I may add to St. Paul. We can have the most beautiful liturgy in the world, but if we do not have love, it is for nothing. And that's what I encourage all of us to remember as we seek our way forward, not to be ever embittered or angry, but people filled with the joy of the gospel and in love with our Lord Jesus and showing that love to our brothers and sisters. The greatest witness that those of this more traditional sensitivity, shall we say, the greatest witness you will give will be a witness of great love, of great kindness, of gentleness, of patience. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not put on airs. It does not brood over injuries, all of those things. If we show love, then we change the face of the world. So let's not ever forget that as much as we may want to get every word right in the liturgy, and as much as we want to get every movement down perfectly in the liturgy, if we do not have love, then it's just a show. So let's be people filled with love.
Dominum quia benignus est.